Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our Industry Roadshow meeting, Return of the U.S. Supply Chain Manufacturing Trends Post-COVID. My name is Marcus Wilkins, and I'm the president of the Greater Houston Manufacturers Association, an entity established for small to mid-sized manufacturers to find more opportunities in the Houston region by learning from each other, as well as networking. And you can find out more information about us at houston-mfg.com. I'm also an advocate of the companies locating to the Houston region and a member of the Greater Houston Partnership, which is the Regional Chamber of Commerce. Representing the entire Houston metropolitan statistical area, the Chamber's footprint covers roughly 10,000 square miles and includes the fourth largest city in the nation, Houston, Texas. During today's event, we'll take a closer look at what we can expect to see in manufacturing and logistics sectors in the coming months and years, and build a case for why considering the Houston region as a location for such operations would be of significant benefit to many firms. The Houston region is home to more than 6,400 manufacturers that produce more than $82 billion in products annually. The industry employs more than 230,000 Houstonians, making ours one of the largest industrial workforces in the country. Manufacturing helps drive Houston's position as a global export hub. In fact, 17% of Houston's economy is tied to exports, a greater percentage than any other U.S. metro. With our central geographic location relative to the U.S. and more broadly the Americas, and with our numerous logistical challenges, Houston is an ideal metro for manufacturing companies that need to reach customers around the world. Manufacturing and logistics are two of several industries we believe will be strengthened post-COVID. We'll talk more today about anticipated increases in manufacturing activities in Central and Southern America that could result in more manufacturing and assembly operations in Greater Houston, and an increase in logistics activities as a result. When you mention manufacturing in Houston, most just think of our core areas like petrochemical, machinery, and fabricated metal products manufacturing. However, small batch manufacturing is a growing facet of activity in the Houston region, and emerging opportunities in biotechnology, clean tech, and food and beverage manufacturing are experiencing growth in the market as well. Houston's melting pot of global industries has turned the region into a hotbed of innovation for broader application of new technologies. As the world around us changes, the manufacturing industry is actively transforming by leveraging new digital technologies, including artificial intelligence, the industrial Internet of Things, additive manufacturing, and more. Training dollars available through the Skills Development Fund and a wide variety of locally available incentives are making it easier for companies to ensure their workforces are armed with the skills necessary for success. There's great work happening within our large companies, but also in our innovation ecosystem with players like the East End Maker Hub and nonprofit Makerspace just east of downtown. And TMCX, an accelerator for cutting-edge medical device manufacturing at the Texas Medical Center's Innovation Institute. The exciting work happening in our region positions us well as a competitive place to attract and grow cutting-edge manufacturing companies, and provides a solution for the relocation for firms in need of a lower-cost, well-situated market. Today, we're fortunate that we'll hear from a variety of speakers who represent large and small industry, infrastructure, and urban manufacturing movement. In so many ways, this mix of industry representatives offers a testament to the robust nature of the Houston region's manufacturing ecosystem. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping items to make everyone aware of. First off, this meeting is being recorded. All attendees are muted, and your videos will be turned off for the entirety of the webinar. There will, however, be time for Q&A somewhere towards the middle and end of this presentation. And if you would, please submit your questions at any time directed to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. And finally, the chat function should not be used for Q&A. It will not be monitored for questions. Now for today's panelists. On our panel today, we have Katie Stanton of the Urban Manufacturing Alliance, Deanna Aurelius with Mitsubishi Forklift, Lauren Calderera with Project Matter and representing the East End Maker Hub, and finally, Shane Williams, Director of the Port of Houston. Now, in that order, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to please take a brief moment to introduce themselves. So Katie, if you would please get us started. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marcus, and thanks to the Greater Houston Partnership for hosting this today and having us all here. My name is Katie Stanton. I'm Programming and Operations Director for a national nonprofit called the Urban Manufacturing Alliance. We are a coalition of what we call manufacturing practitioners who are working together to grow more equitable and prosperous local economies and neighborhoods by building sustainable and inclusive manufacturing sectors. At UMA, we really believe that manufacturing is still a way to earn a family-sustaining wage and a way to create wealth for generations, whether that's through a production job on a factory floor, a management position, ownership of a manufacturing company, or through starting your own business through entrepreneurship. And so we really tried to connect people within and between cities to build ecosystems that support manufacturing businesses of all sizes. I'll leave it at that and get into more later. Thanks, Marcus.
All right, thank you, Katie. Now, next up, we have Deanna Aurelius with Mitsubishi Forklift. You're muted, Deanna.
Hi, Deanna Aurelius, and I'm really happy to be here today, joining this great group of people who's just as excited about manufacturing as I am and I have been. I work for a company named Mitsubishi Logistics Americas, and in my role, I'm responsible for trade compliance for all of the group companies. Mitsubishi Caterpillar Forklift is one of the group companies. It's known as MCFA. MCFA was founded in 1992 and has been here in the Houston region, being prosperous this whole time, employing close to 850 employees. We have a 59-acre campus and 600,000 square feet of office and manufacturing space. I'm really excited to have reached my 20th year with the MCFA and Mitsubishi Logistics companies. It's been a fantastic experience, and one of the best things that I've been able to do is use my skill set and my knowledge of trade to help simplify that process for the company. Help them implement programs and bring in incentives that help the company save millions of dollars. So it's definitely a passion for me. I'm really excited to be here talking to you all and sharing this information and really to impress upon you what a great place Houston is to work, to create and to succeed.
Thank you, Deanna. And next up, we have Lauren Calderera with Project Matter, representing the East End Maker Hub.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Marcus. My name is Lauren, and I co-founded Project Matter to partner nonprofits and local governments to create more economic development initiatives that elevate Houston. One of my favorite programs that I get to work on is the East End Maker Hub with the Urban with the Urban Partnerships Community Development Corporation. And so we'll get to hear more about that today. I'm excited to share what's going on in the East End of Houston. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you. And finally, on our panel today, we have Shane Williams, Director of Port of Houston.
Yes, my introduction should be fairly easy. I'm the Economic Development Director of Port Houston. We are an economic engine for a lot of manufacturing companies that need to import and export through our facilities. But more important to today's discussion under our Economic Development Department is our Foreign Trade Zone program, which is a federally run program nationally. Every state has at least one foreign trade zone. Texas currently has the most foreign trade zones of any state. We run FTZ number 84, which encompasses all of Harris County, and some of our surrounding counties. And my role is to try to keep that program robust and keep helping manufacturers and businesses take advantage of the benefits that the Foreign Trade Zone program can offer. And I hope to offer a few tidbits about both the port and our Foreign Trade Zone program in our discussions today.
All right, thank you, Shane. Okay, now we're going to get started here today with some questions for the entire group, and then we'll move on to some individual questions. So, and again, please do submit your questions to the Q&A. First up, COVID-19 has provided new opportunities in the manufacturing and innovation industry. How is Houston positioned to benefit from the industry-wide changes we expect to see? And let's go in reverse order. Shane, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think that, one thing that we're seeing as a port, and I think with manufacturing and then of course with e-commerce, is more inventory is needed. We've seen through COVID. Now, that's not going to be just because of COVID. I think that trend was starting to be there. Companies that have an ability to take advantage of having longer inventories sitting so that they can do some things just in time so that they don't get interrupted by a global pandemic, obviously, but also, what did we just see in the last couple of weeks? Hurricanes, weather things that slow stuff down, trade disruptions, whether that's tariff or unrest in companies that we trade with. I think COVID has shown us that we need to find different trade lanes to trade with. We need to find longer inventory times. The cost savings of just having a small warehouse and having your just-in-time stuff, I think that's gone. And that's where, again, FTZ, I'll keep harping on that on every question I get, can help reduce the cost of some higher inventory, but also help you make more money by not getting slowed down when hopefully a pandemic doesn't happen again, but other things that cause slowdown would happen.
Thank you. Open the question up to the rest of the group.
I'd like to echo what Shane has focused on. I know in our business, we experienced, some supply chain disruptions early on, specifically with regards to suppliers being in some areas of the world where it was really challenging to get products out. And so definitely having a foreign trade zone has helped. I think that that Houston is very well positioned to help companies because we have the diversity of just having a strong infrastructure, having very strong logistics providers, having a variety of them. So with that comes that strength, but also just having opportunities to think outside the box because we're in such a great hub for that. I think it really gives folks lots of options to be successful. And, it doesn't mean it isn't challenging, but it just gives us more opportunities. And we've definitely been grateful for that diversity in the logistics infrastructure, great service providers who have great customer service, and also networking with other industry experts that are local. That's really been great. So I think that's a huge strength for Houston.
I'll just add something really quick here, Marcus. I think overall COVID has really enlightened communities, both from an economic development perspective, like folks at ports, folks at, public agencies, but also like on the community level to the absolute need of keeping manufacturing ecosystems alive and well in cities. I mean, we saw it across every state, every town, every big city that there was this dire need for personal protective equipment, PPE, right at the beginning, and it's still ongoing in so many places. And without a local supply chain, we were not able to respond in a way that was efficient and creating the level of safety that we needed, especially for our essential workers and first responders. And so if you can extrapolate that need to what if another hurricane happens or the fires out west, you can really see where manufacturing can play a vital role, not only to a disaster response, but also just to lift up an economy generally in good times as well as bad. So I would say that renewed sense that manufacturing is really critical and really important is something that I'm seeing as a sort of an outcome of the COVID crisis.
And I'll just add to what Katie said. I think one of the things that we saw in Houston was the nimbleness of some of our small batch manufacturings to pivot their production lines in order to meet PPE demands. And so to me, I think one of the things that we're going to see moving forward is this idea of like, how can our manufacturers continue to pivot, continue to be nimble, and continue to look at new ways to operate given, you know, future disasters or future restrictions that come on us. And so I think, you know, Katie's right on to say we need that local supply chain. We need to think more locally and regionally. And then we also need to support manufacturers in creating pivoting plans so that they can easily, you know, I think just be nimble enough to move around as they need to be.
All right, thank you. We're going to stay with you, Lauren, if you would, and let me ask you a question just for you. The Kinder Institute has a study called Diverse Needs of Small Batch Manufacturers in Houston. Like in many other places around the country, the study says that finding affordable space for business, access to capital, finding qualified workers, attracting new customers, and finding the right equipment to scale production can be challenging in the region. So I have a two-part question for you. Part one, what is happening in the Houston market to address these issues? And in the second part of that, what immediate and long-term actions do you believe Houston manufacturers, the manufacturing community, can take to solve these challenges?
Thanks, Marcus. So I'm going to spend a little time talking about the East End Maker Hub because I think it's something that's unique, that's happening in Houston. And we have seen models of kind of multi-tenant manufacturing spaces around the US, but nothing where a multi-tenant manufacturing space and a maker space are co-located together and with it's such a large space. So East End Maker Hub is a 300,000 square foot manufacturing facility that will be home to over 100 small batch manufacturers who need space anywhere from 400 square feet to 40,000 square feet. So this can include folks like woodworkers or jewelry makers, but it can also include, you know, biohealth startups, robotics startups, larger R&D and corporate partners can be in the same space as well. The really cool thing about the space is the fact that it's co-located with TXRX, which is Houston's largest maker space, and I think the largest maker space in the South. TXRX has over $2 million of manufacturing equipment, so everything from 3D printers and laser cutters, machining, woodworking, welding, you name it, they have it. And so for the tenants at the Maker Hub, they have free access to that equipment. They have free opportunities to utilize the job training programs that TXRX offers so that their employees can get upskilled. And then there's just this great opportunity to create these collisions because you have everybody co-located together. There's a real opportunity, I think, for new products and new ideas to emerge. So I think that's kind of the answer to your first space is I think we need to see more multi-tenant manufacturing spaces like this. And the TXRX and East End Maker Hub, in my opinion, have been catalysts for other spaces around Houston. So now in Gulfton, we now have Connect Community and the Sewn Goods Textile Incubator that'll be coming online. We have Baker Ripley's, you know, their maker spaces alongside HCC. So to me, it's really thinking about how now do we start to create this maker manufacturing ecosystem and really start to support the needs of our makers, which is what, just to go back to what you started with, which is exactly what that Kinder Institute did, was that foundational research to really figure out what the needs are. I mean, I think in terms of your second question around short-term and long-term, to me, you know, thinking about this from a makerspace perspective, historically makerspaces have been spaces where people prototype products. I really think that there's a place now for our manufacturing and makerspace community to coalesce and think about how these spaces serve to really prototype new ideas around solving gaps in the supply chain, around thinking about how to create more locally branded initiatives so we start to elevate our companies that are doing this work, and then also thinking about how do we start to help, as I said before, how do we start to help our manufacturers go through this pivoting process. So I really see some of the things that we can do in the short term and long term is really bringing these ideas together and starting to prototype them through partnerships between, you know, small batch manufacturers and maker spaces.
Fantastic. All very interesting stuff. The makerspace idea is just a great way to bring people together and be able to share knowledge and really further a lot of projects. Thank you. Our next question is going to be for Katie. Katie, I'll ask, can you please explain the concept of urban manufacturing and why it's important? More specifically, can you please, or how can communities ensure long-term sustainable success in the urban manufacturing space?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Lauren took the words right out of my mouth. So in a good way. So urban manufacturing can be anything from those jewelers or woodworkers that might be in the East End Maker Hub just starting their business. It could be someone making salsa in their kitchen. It could be a robotics device manufacturer, or it could be petrochemical manufacturers at the legacy level. And so manufacturing can look a ton of different ways. And that's really shifted in just a generation's time, right? Like we used to define manufacturing as these monolithic entities that you could, access the jobs easily, but just by walking into the factory floor and getting all the training you need. And I think the changes in urban manufacturing is not only the size and scale and also sort of the artisanal nature, but also the technology that so many companies, basically every company now relies on. And so that really creates a lot of barriers to manufacturing. So with the Kinder study and the need for a qualified workforce, for example, is like I said, you used to be able to walk onto the factory floor, maybe with just a high school education or maybe even less, and get a family sustaining wage almost immediately. And while that's still possible, there are more and more barriers that are coming online, whether it's a barrier to workforce training, to get those skills that you need to move up on the production floor, or even to start your own business. And so the way I think that I see the opportunity around manufacturing and making sure it's sustainable in the long term is really doing what the East End Maker Hub and really what this whole panel is talking about today, which is building a stronger manufacturing ecosystem. So at UMA, we support practitioners. So people like Shane at the Port, people like Lauren, who are catalyzing maker spaces and other incubator spaces or workforce nonprofits. And we're really solving for two things. One, getting the conditions right for businesses, and then creating connectivity to diverse communities. And so for the former, the conditions, that's really making sure the right set of services exist for makers and manufacturers of all sizes, whether you're just starting out or you're at the level of Diana and Mitsubishi, right? Which I can never say right, so I apologize. But the conditions are access to affordable space, access to the right kinds of capital at the right time, access to both professional skills, but also technical skill training for communities and neighborhoods, entrepreneurial support programming, responsive zoning, which I know is less of an issue in Houston than in other cities. But once you get the right kind of service providers together and connected, you're building the right kind of platform and foundation for not only companies that are starting locally, but maybe companies who want to move to Houston to relocate, but also, as Lauren pointed out, the connectivity between those two, I think, is the real power and potential. And the other part that I think is critical, and then I'll leave it to my other colleagues to finish answering their questions, but at UMA, again, we really believe that manufacturing is an equitable economic development strategy, and that in order for companies to truly find qualified workers, we need to better connect to communities in non-traditional ways. So maybe it's going through churches or community centers to reach those constituents. It's talking to guidance counselors and parents, not just the kids themselves or the students themselves, but we're really trying to engage a wide variety of folks to bring them back to the understanding that manufacturing is still here. It provides a really important part of our economy. It provides an opportunity for a really good wage that will sustain you and your family for a long time. So I think between ecosystem building and connecting back to communities, that's the way that urban manufacturing can remain sustainable.
Thank you. Great answer. I love the fact that there's alignment between the East End Maker Hub and the Urban Manufacturing Alliance, and that you guys really understand each other and complement each other that you're doing over there. All right, next question for Shane. There are more than 6,400 manufacturers in the Houston region producing more than $80 billion of products annually. As a manufacturer in Houston, what are some of the tools or networks that companies should tap into to ensure success?
Yeah, I think that when we hear those numbers, they're massive numbers for Houston manufacturing, and almost so big it's hard to wrap your head around. And one thing we found as we try to get more manufacturing into Port of Houston, and what we do is it's almost so big and so hard to wrap your head around that smaller even medium-sized manufacturing companies assume everything we're doing for manufacturers are for the big guys, for the guys that are producing those big numbers. I don't do anything like that, so I'll just try to figure this thing out on my own. And that's definitely not what we want. And or even they think, a lot of those oil refineries manufacturing, they'll deal with them, not with us. But I've hinted on it 2 or 3 times already, so let's go ahead and talk about it. I think one of the big tools, especially when you're trying to save money, and frankly right now, but anytime, and especially as we go through the recovery, hopefully really soon now on post-COVID, is the Foreign Trade Zone program. It's a federal program, which I know is a little bit scary as a private manufacturer to think about dipping your toe into the feds and letting them into your business, so to speak. But what the Foreign Trade Zone program can do for manufacturers, there's a myriad of benefits, but we'll stick to the short and sweet. And if it's something that makes sense, we can go deeper after the webinar. Let me know and we'll go into it. But, it's all federal benefits. So a lot of the raw material that you may be bringing into your manufacturing facility right now may have quite high tariffs on it. In a good year, they'll have pretty decent tariffs, but recently they have pretty high tariffs. And, when you produce that into a product, good jobs manufacturing here in the United States, good made in America product, at the end of the day, you're still paying a chunk of import tariff that maybe we can help eliminate in a foreign trade zone, because we can make your facility considered part of the foreign trade zone. That import tariff, that let's just throw 25% out on that raw material that comes into your facility. You manufacture it into a finished product. Let's just say metal into a metal chair. The metal chair, while your raw material might be at 25%, your metal chair might be at 4% tariff if you were to import a full completed metal chair. But because you did it in the foreign trade zone, customs will see the product as a foreign chair, not some domestic product and some raw material. It's a metal chair. So what you might have been paying 25% on with your raw material, you'll now pay 4% as a finished product. It's called duty inversion. It's one of the main reasons the Foreign Trade Zone program were set up. About 100 years ago, I think they were newspapers, not TVs then, but a lot of the same words were being said. We're getting beat by other countries in manufacturing. We're not manufacturing and exporting enough. So the Department of Commerce and Department of Treasury created this foreign trade zone to keep manufacturing in the United States, to fight off nearshoring by putting your facility in Mexico, Canada, or South America, and doing exactly what you would do in the foreign trade zone, doing all those raw materials there and then just importing the chair into the United States. That's not positive for us as a country. So you can do all that in your facility, be competitive with the other countries that are manufacturing and importing that finalized product here. And it's a fairly easy thing. Deanna may mention it some later on. I'm the guy that's saying do it. She's the person that's actually done it and has seen some success. And then there's some other duty deferrals and things. But for manufacturing, if I were getting into it and I were maybe struggling with some of the pricing of stuff right now, the first thing I would start looking at is the Foreign Trade Zone program, which is a federal program based, again, it's not a trick. There's no catch. Their job is to try to keep these manufacturing jobs in the United States. That's why we're giving those benefits out.
Thank you, Shane. It sounds like a great program, and I really encourage people to just try to really understand the impact that the Port of Houston makes on our region. It's really one of our crown jewels, and it's hard to really understand the economic impact that it has. You mentioned Deanna, and now let's move on to a question for Deanna, please. My question for you, Deanna, excuse me, would be, as a major manufacturer in the Houston region, can you share with us some detail about your staffing needs throughout the year? And more specifically, what have your experiences and results been with finding talent in the market?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so staffing for our company in particular, 2020 has been an outlier. So there have been some challenges. Our company definitely has been impacted by COVID, just like many other companies, and we had, impact to our orders and those kinds of things. So from a staffing perspective, though, we've still needed good talent. During the year, the staffing needs fluctuate. Normally, second and fourth quarter, our fiscal second and fourth quarter where we see an uptick in staffing. But we've also seen, even though we've had some negative impacts with COVID, we've also seen some very positive changes. We've seen noticed trends in our industry, need for different types of products, more emphasis on electric products. And so that, of course, then translates to what our staffing needs should be. So we have been fortunate to be in the Houston area where we have a greater talent pool than maybe some of the other areas, but we still have our challenges. And I think if we focus on, some of the things that Katie and Lauren mentioned earlier, and really helping our local citizens, get the right skill set, that's great. It's not always a 4-year degree. I mean, it's great if it is, but sometimes, that doesn't teach the individual what's needed on the manufacturing line. And so we really need to diversify that thought process. So staffing, we've seen some changes, but it's not all negative. We have some positives there, and we're definitely starting to see the demand increase, and we're starting to have some new hires as well. So that's been very positive.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, we're going to go back to another group question. So I asked the group, inventory is critically important to manufacturing. Given all the chemical manufacturing feedstock in this region, what unique strengths does the Houston market present, if any, and to which types of manufacturers? If you'd like, Deanna, you could go first, or if someone else wants to jump in.
Sure, that's great. So a unique strength. So I want to go back to what I mentioned initially, which was the infrastructure. And then I want to kind of touch base on some of the points Shane made about the Foreign Trade Zone program. If you're a manufacturer who has any foreign inputs at all, then a zone is a program that can help you. So at a really high level, normally when you have products coming into the United States from a foreign country, customs wants to take a percentage of that, right? It's just part of doing business. And in this case, the government agrees to delay their payday. And they delay their payday, and not only do they do that, so if you're a distribution, you delay that, and so that's cash flow for your company. If you're in a manufacturing environment and you're manufacturing a new and different product, then not only do you get a delayed payday for the government, you also are now potentially paying them less, and they're agreeing to that. So that's the huge benefit of the zone, and one of the strengths. We're very fortunate that we have someone like Shane at the port who really understands the program, helps simplify the process. There's a process, there's an analysis that a company would need to do to see if it benefits them. Then there's some formalities, an application that has to be completed, providing the government with a description of their company and what processes it's going through. And then some government interactions with tax authorities and also customs agents. But what's great about that is that the port already has those strong relationships with the tax authorities and with the customs agents. So a company can really kind of lean on the port to help educate them. They also provide some public meetings where they bring people from all industries, all different sizes, and they share ideas. It's free. They bring government officials in there for part of the time, and they're hearing directly from them. So I think that this is a very strong program for any manufacturer or distributor bringing in products from foreign locations. So there's definitely an opportunity to save money. I had a lot of questions early on. I had to pitch this idea to our upper management, and I got all of these questions like, well, it sounds too good to be true, and why hasn't anybody done that? So, it isn't like a one-day turnaround where you apply for the program. but it's really something that can be beneficial to a company of any size. So I just want to emphasize that, and that coupled with, even if you choose not to go that route, being in the Houston space with great resources like Katie and Lauren and the work that they're doing in educating small batch manufacturers, in also bringing in big industry and having them partner, I think that's just a huge win. I would be really nervous as a small business owner if I was starting a business and I really didn't have any help around. But Houston isn't that kind of place. So I think this is, it's just a win for anybody wanting to start a small business. And if you're mid-size, that's helpful to you as well. I read a statistic indicating that 98.4% of all manufacturers in the United States are small to mid-size manufacturers. So if we really want to be successful and improve our economy, we need to support those manufacturers, small businesses in general, but especially our small to mid-size businesses through these types of resources. So those are my 2 cents.
All right. Did anybody want to comment on that? We also have some some questions from the audience as well, but I want to give anyone a chance that may want to speak to that last question. All right. Okay. So from Shelley, we have a question. Are there distinctions or differences in the application of FTZ benefits to the manufacture of consumables versus finished products? For example, the metal chair. In terms of consumables, she's specifically interested in food and beverage. Whoever feels most. Yes.
I think hopefully I can answer that one. I should be able to. There are differences. So the answer is yes and no, which is a typical federal government type answer, I think. So keeping the bar right where it is. There's not a different application you're going to do. So to get into the foreign trade zone, you'll do an original FTZ application just to set your space, whether that's a space you're leasing, a space you own, a space someone else owns and your company's in it. You do an application to get that authorized by the Foreign Trade Zone Board in Washington, D.C. That takes 5 to 8 business days, and it's about 12 questions. Not hard. We can walk y'all through that part. Pretty easy. You get in, your space is authorized. I'm getting my benefits now, right? No. Then the second step in the process isn't hard, but we do want to.
Shane may have frozen up. Okay. Give him just 1 second to see if that'll come back around. Now we'll move on to another question here and we'll let Shane pick back up. All right, let me ask a question for Lauren. During the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak and PPE shortage, TXRX, a partner of the Eastern Maker Hub, manufactured and distributed 89,995 face shields, 26,750 cloth masks, and 3,000 halyard procedure masks. Can you speak to that effort and highlight how the manufacturing industry works to solve daily problems, and specifically lessons learned, partners and collaborations that were built, and how this will impact the industry and more specifically TXRX moving forward?
To me, one of the biggest learnings is that there was no way TXRX could do that work alone. It was a huge undertaking and it required so many incredible partners coming in to support the effort. And whether those partners were other maker spaces, such as Houston Community College's makerspace or Baker Ripley or Sewn Goods, you know, or even thinking about all the different manufacturers that came in to say, hey, I want to help out, the doctors who came in to say, hey, we want to help with the prototyping of products. Like that effort, and I think if we were ever to face another similar disaster, it would again take that that community of people to come together to do this work. And so, you know, to me, the biggest lesson learned is like we can't go back to just being head down in our manufacturing world at our business. We need to start really developing these partnerships and elevating the work of the partnerships, because without those relationships, that we would have never been able to accomplish what we were able to do.
Thank you very much. And now let me ask a question for Katie, and then I have a question that may take us to the end that's from the group. But first, Katie, if you would, what can you tell us about expected trends in urban manufacturing post-COVID, and how is Houston positioned to fare in the changing small batch environment?
A really important question. I'll let maybe Lauren and Deanna kind of respond to the latter about Houston specifically. But I think we're anticipating as a manufacturing community a reshoring of manufacturing firms. And I think that could take a lot of forms. I think it could take forms in like converting, contracts that you have overseas, that manufacturing firms have overseas, back to regional or local manufacturers. But I also think it could look like legacy manufacturers actually rebuilding facilities, whether they're small or large, here back in the United States. I think it goes to what Shane has been talking about. I think it also goes with the foreign trade zones and just how you do business in America with manufacturing. I think it also goes to, I think what I mean to say is the bigger question is, can we support that as a country, whether it's a city government, state, or federal? And I think that goes to the workforce development challenges that I was talking about earlier and that Deanna mentioned as well. And making sure that we have the right sorts of services in place so that when these large companies want to make that investment back into our communities, we have the right kind of spaces, we have the right kind of workforce skills training, we have the right kind of capital that they need. And also to not forget that there are so many small batch and mid-sized manufacturers too that are here that could really benefit from those types of contracts. So how can these legacy manufacturers really use what already exists in Houston rather than starting something brand new or looking to take one manufacturing firm from one American community to another? What can we actually leverage that's already in a place like Houston in order to build the economy that way? But Lauren and Deanna, I'd love to hear your response for the Houston specific answer.
I think you are right on, Katie. I'll just add, like, one of the things that we're seeing now on the ground is mid-sized and smaller manufacturers who do want to go through this onshoring process. Part of the reason that part of the benefit for them is to be able to see kind of the prototyping production process happening here. They're not having to not be able to look at it because it's so far away. And so they can be more on the floor watching this process take place and watching and collaborating around the job training so that the skills that they're needing are are very tuned and very tailored to what the job is going to entail. And so I think, we are starting to see that. I think we're just going to continue to see that effort kind of move forward.
In addition to that, I think, we're also seeing the trend towards just more the use of technology with our products as well. So really focusing on whether it's the redesign or revamping or of new and different products, and figuring out how we support those products as they're being sold to our end customers. We see that kind of a demand, while we've seen maybe a reduction in orders for a certain type of customer, we've seen increases for others, right? So whether it's like the retail food or grocery businesses, distribution hubs, all those types of companies need our material handling products. So the change and the shift to technology will require us to problem solve in a different way, to train our workforce, maybe look for new talent with these skills. So that's a positive thing, but also a challenge, and we want to keep up with that, and we want to be able to have the same high quality products and have high customer service. So that's just something that we need to be mindful of, and we're definitely dedicated to in the future.
All right, we just for housekeeping here, we have about 13 minutes left or so, and we are going to leave a little bit of time at the end for our panelists to be able to make a final statement. But I do want to ask one more group question. And the question is that it's widely anticipated that manufacturing of the future will be much more technological in its scope than manufacturing of the past. And technology shifts will be more rapid post-COVID than we would have seen without the presence of the pandemic for many reasons. How can communities prepare for this change, and what do you see in Houston, if anything, that gives you hope in that regard, as far as our ability to change and meet the needs that technology will bring to the manufacturing industry?
I'd like to mention, I think that a big focus, and it might seem premature, but is really to focus on our youth and inspiring them to want to work in manufacturing, to see why it's a great place, you know, to work, that space, creating something new, innovating. You know, I have 2 kids, and and they love all the things other kids love, you know, social media and all, and that's wonderful. But I had this discussion often, like, you know, our youth, are they excited about manufacturing? Do they see how that can help shape our economy, how we can innovate, how we can, you know, continue to be leaders globally? And so I think that we really need to start with our youth, and it's got to start much earlier than you know, even the community college level. I'm talking, you know, little ones, getting them excited about that, and doing that and partnering with all the other initiatives that Lauren and Katie and Shane talked about. So partnering with our governments, you know, I think we're fortunate. We're in a city and in a state that really values business development and growth and really supporting manufacturing. So I think youth coupled with government partnership and then industry collaboration, that'll help take us to the next level in meeting those next phases of where we need to get with from a technology standpoint.
Thank you. Would anyone else care to comment?
Yeah, just really quickly, I couldn't agree more with what Deanna just said. I think there's also just a joy of making things with your hands that so many people have forgotten or don't really understand or are disconnected. And so I think the more that I feel like I'm a broken record, but I think the more we can connect communities, whether it's youth, parents, guidance counselors, doctors, like Lauren said, just folks in neighborhoods, back to manufacturing to really make sure that that they know the jobs are there. But we can't just stop there, right? Like, we have to make sure that those communities then also have the appropriate skills in order to acquire those jobs. And so whether it's starting with more STEM education at the pre-K, you know, K through 12 levels, or whether it's, you know, taking adult populations and upskilling and reskilling them in order to make sure that the technology demands on the manufacturer side are met by those workforce training operations. I think once you have that industry alignment with those workforce partners, that's really when you can scale the workforce that's going to be needed as technology shifts, but also as companies reshore or just continually need to hire and sort of on a pre-COVID level.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one last question before we do our closing statements. I'll echo the same. I really feel, I think those are great answers, and that when people think of technology of the future, you know, it really starts with the people. And there is no technology that can replace a competent worker. Appreciate the work that all of your groups do. And for our last question, whoever may like to answer, for new manufacturers that are entering the US market, can anyone on the group speak to how the Greater Houston Partnership and Houston business community help overcome the supply chain issues and create more ease of communication, networking challenges and such that come along with COVID? And, you know, with your interaction with the partnership and other groups, just some advice for Ahmed here, who sent this question in, that you may have to help him navigate some of those difficulties that come up. And then again, we'll finish with a closing statement from each of our panelists, and then we'll wish everyone a great day. So please.
Well, from a supply chain perspective, that can always be very challenging. I think starting with some resources like the Greater Houston Partnership, who obviously has a very diverse membership and can provide that expertise. I think that's definitely helpful. Looking to other members who can provide insight into the use of service providers. And, you know, even just having a coffee break with one of those individuals. Maybe now it's virtually, but I think a lot can be shared in a 30-minute meeting. You know, if they're in a 30-minute meeting and a very experienced person can give you the blueprint for how you're going to avoid a lot of headaches. So I think that the Greater Houston Partnership is a great resource for that. And of course the other members. And then, you know, sometimes you run into folks like Shane who have that nuts and bolts experience and can even help connect you with some of those key service providers. So I think that's definitely helpful if you're new, just someone who can give you the big picture, simply.
Would anyone else like to give a brief statement before we close out?
I would just also add or suggest, like, check in, you know, the city has their Office of Business Opportunity, the county has their office, the port has their, like, there's so many resources, but it does take kind of the legwork to go and look at them and figure out how they fit in and how each of those different entities can support a new business. And so, you know, I think definitely through the GHP and then through some of these other associations and the Greater Houston Manufacturing Association as well, I think that, you know, new manufacturers can kind of better understand the landscape and the resources that are available to them.
And I would just say, I know I got cut off in the middle of trying to answer one of the questions, but, you know, I know GHP will have our information out there. If there is anyone that needs a more detailed, full answer on the application process, the FTZ program is clearly more reliable than our internet. I think Centerpoint is digging new gas lines and hit my internet. So I'm hot spotting off my phone now. So sorry about that. FTZ program's not that hard. I know Deanna was able to handle anything I wasn't, but no, please, I think this webinar, the main reason we did it is to get a lot of people on there that can help manufacturing companies. Please take us up on what we can do to answer any questions once the webinar is over. That's where we can really get into the nuts and bolts of how to help.
All right. Okay. We have our last 5 minutes here, and what I'd like to ask from each of our panelists is to take just about 1 minute and give us your closing statement. So first, Shane, we'll get you, in case your battery dies here, we'll get you, we'll let you go first, and then we'll work through the group.
Yeah, no, I would say, you know, I think we've heard through this webinar, Houston is a fortunate place to be if you're a manufacturer. We have a plethora of logistic companies, a plethora of import facilities, whether it's rail, seaport, us, or 2 major airports. Take advantage of that, you know, through GHP, through the associations we have represented here on this this call. You know, get connected with other manufacturers. That's really the best thing I can say is, you know, they can help answer some of the questions, some of the troubles you're going through, the associations, the port, anything we can do to make it easier. It's already in a great climate to be doing manufacturing, and you're literally the backbone of what Houston was built on. And as, you know, as oil manufacturing, but now it's so many different things we can see. We don't dip as much into oil recessions as we used to. Still a major part of what we do, but manufacturing as a whole is. So please continue to be strong. Let us know how we can help. Don't try to do it on your own.
Thank you very much, Shane, and thank you for being part of the panel today. Deanna, if you would, go next.
Yes, I have a few very practical manufacturing trade tips. If you're new to manufacturing, do your homework, know your product, ask yourself, am I going to be importing any products? If you are, jot those down. Get yourself a good customs broker and figure out what the duties are going to be for the inputs and for your finished product. That's going to guide you down the right path and tell you you have an opportunity to save money. So do your homework. I know you're going to be in good hands. But if you take a little time, it's going to be well worth your effort, and hopefully you'll save a lot of money down the road. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm really happy to share my lunch hour with you.
Very good. If we could get Lauren to go next, and then we'll finish with Katie.
Sure. So I guess I have two kind of thoughts right now. One thought is kind of building off of what Deanna and Katie said earlier. Like, if you're a parent out there, go get your kids a set of screwdrivers and hammers and start building stuff and giving them the hands-on knowledge that they can understand what manufacturing is and how things are made. Like, we are so removed from the way things are made. And I think as manufacturers, everyone here is in the best place to start educating our youth and our younger people and start sharing that with them. So, you know, I think that's my first, like, you know, thing. Secondly, I also think, like, we have started in Houston building this ecosystem, but we are long from making it a strong ecosystem. And so, you know, I would say let's not stop this conversation today. We need to start thinking about how do we start to move these locally branded initiatives, you know, along. How do we start to develop better procurement pipelines for folks? And how do we get our new, you know, our new and early stage manufacturers better access to capital and labor so that they can grow and scale locally? And I think that dialogue, like, it's the right time to have that dialogue given Corona and given where we are. And so, you know, I would just say let's, however we can, let's keep that moving forward.
Thank you, Lauren. And Katie, if you would, please close us out.
Yeah, Lauren totally stole mine. I was going to say, don't let the conversation stop here. You know, I think what Lauren said in the answer to the previous question, you know, there's resources aggregated across so many different platforms, and it's really time consuming for businesses to really try to wade through all of that. And so the more that local partners can come together and create, whether it's like a local brand that Lauren reference, like a Made in Houston, or whether it's through the Greater Houston Partnership, really aggregating those resources so you remove the barriers and just lessen business owners' time. And so building that ecosystem, making it more accessible, all in order to remove barriers, I think would be the thing I'll leave with today.
All right, and I'll finish this out by saying I want to thank the Greater Houston Partnership for putting this event on. I want to thank each of our panelists, Katie, Shane, Lauren, and Deanna, for the great content for this event. And also, I want to thank the partnership for the help they give the Greater Houston Manufacturers Association that allows us to be able to provide the support that we do to small and medium businesses and try to make an impact that helps people grow and prosper in this region. And with that, hope everyone has a great day and enjoy yourself. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for the conversation, Marcus. Appreciate you facilitating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.